Okay, what are we made of? That's a problem that people have been thinking of for quite a long time now. And in the last few hundred years, we've been able to solve it. And this is the man that did it, John Dalton, October 1803. He published a paper in Manchester to the Manchester Literary and Philosophical Society, which proved once and for all that there were things called atoms and molecules. The Greeks had thought of that. They called them atoms, or atomos. Not tomos, cut. Things that could not be cut or divided up. In fact, this is a picture that Dalton actually presented. Here are some drawings of molecules. And in particular, I'll put a ring around this one, that is carbon dioxide. And many of you will have heard of carbon dioxide because that's one of those greenhouse gases that we're all rather worried about. Now, we're all made of very, very tiny atoms. And atoms are really rather small. In fact, you can put them in different patterns. These atoms are all separated. But we can actually add atoms together. In fact, if we take two hydrogen atoms and add them to one oxygen atom, here the two red hydrogen atoms and the one blue oxygen atom, we've got H2O. And these are some H2O molecules. So atoms are the single atoms of the elements, and when we put them together, they're called molecules. Now, you can actually put them together, and they actually are quite interesting, because in the gas, they all float around all over the place. And in a liquid, they're all together, but they can roll amongst each other. And in a crystal, the atoms stick together in a rigid structure. The atoms are so tiny that with some of the best microscopes, you can hardly see them. We have, in the last few years, developed microscopes that are so powerful that we can see these tiny atoms. Now, your main atoms are carbon, all right, and nitrogen, and oxygen, and hydrogen, all right? Basically, those are your main atoms, the main atoms that go into your body. Almost the whole of biochemistry and biology and life are based on the chemistry of these four atoms. There are some others, like iron and silicon and other things that you might have heard of, and they're involved too, but these are the main ones. Now, atoms stick together to make molecules, as I've told you. And that's how you're formed, because those atoms come together, make molecules, and those molecules stick together and come together to make people like you. In air, the main molecules are oxygen and nitrogen. And then there's also water. That's also in the air, water vapor. And of course, you know the clouds form and the raindrops come down, and they are the H2O molecules that form water. And that's why we call it H2O, because there's an oxygen and two hydrogen atoms. Water molecules are all really very, very, very tiny. In fact, there are a lot of tiny water molecules in a glass of water. I bet you can't guess how many there are. Some of you might say 1,000. Some of you might say 100,000 or 1,000,000. In actual fact, in a glass of water, there are 1,000,000, million, million, million molecules. So they're pretty tiny, if you think of that. You're all made of lots of tiny, tiny molecules. And in fact, this is an important molecule. You might have heard of it. It's penicillin. Many of you might have had penicillin if you'd had bacterial infection. In fact, millions of lives have been saved by this tiny molecule. It's made of carbon, and there you see the oxygen and the nitrogen, the hydrogen, and that S there is for sulfur. It's a sulfur molecule, which you sometimes find in volcanoes. That molecule has saved huge numbers of lives, and you or someone in your family almost certainly has had penicillin. So you may well have really had a big effect on your family. One of the prettiest molecules is this molecule. It's one we discovered in 1985. It's called the buckyball. It's made of carbon. It has 60 carbon atoms, and they're all distributed in a beautiful pattern, and that pattern is the same as on a soccer ball. In fact, we call it Buckminster fullerene, but for short, people like to call it the buckyball. Thank you.